Finland's leaders say they support the country applying for NATO membership. Now, Sweden is also considering a similar move. Finland shares an over 800-mile-long border with Russia. Moscow said that it will be forced to take, quote, retaliatory steps if Finland joins the alliance. So here for more analysis of this is William Albert. He is the Director of Strategy, Technology and Arms Control at the International Institute for Strategic Studies and has been working with both Finland and Sweden on their NATO membership applications over the past few months. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really interesting. For quite a long time, people spoke about the Finland model, right, where there was military neutrality, but in recent years, economically aligning with Europe. So this is a major shift when Finland starts to talk about joining NATO. Can you talk about just how significant this is?
Oh, it's massive significance. I mean, Finland has prior experience being invaded by the Soviet Union. And so for them to watch Russia attack Ukraine, first in 2014, sent chills through the Finnish political system as they realized that they could be next. February 24th, 2022, however, sends this message to the entire population that they are not safe unless they have NATO membership. This changes so much about the security for the Baltic region and the High North. This makes the Baltic Sea so much easier to defend for the NATO alliance and really takes options away from Russia in terms of initiating combat in the region. So therefore, it makes it a safer region.
And people should know that Finland has been, beefing up its own military. It has a formidable military, and it would be a great asset to NATO as well, not just the other way around.
That's right.
How has Russia's invasion of Ukraine enhanced Finland's prospects of joining NATO? Meaning, perhaps, before this, NATO members may have been concerned about provoking Russia, but at this point, maybe not so much.
Well, since 2014, the cooperation between NATO and Finland has increased so much. Also Sweden, as they've started really talking about Baltic Sea security in a much deeper way, because when you have a Russia that's willing to attack its neighbors, this becomes much more of an existential concern. So Finland has reintroduced conscription. They exercise with very, very large forces in the field. They have one of the best artillery forces in Europe. They bought the US F-35 Joint Strike Fighter in order to be compatible with the United States and with NATO, and to be able to really present a tremendous boost to allied security if they join the alliance.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about how there's been support within both Finland and Sweden for joining NATO, but it does work both ways. If you join, it also means that you will have to come to the aid of other NATO members. And so I'm wondering, in both those countries, is there support for that as well? Is there an understanding that it's not just about sort of protecting you from Russia or any other threats, but you also have to participate?
Oh, that's absolutely true. So as you mentioned, so Finland has announced, the president, Sauli Niinistö, has announced that Finland intends to join. Their party is going to meet tomorrow. The Social Democrats are going to meet tomorrow to endorse that decision. We expect Sweden to follow very quickly after. They just did a report, the Swedish government, on implications for the security environment. And they talk about this in the report. They talk about how this could tie them to, other types of crises, other types of decisions. But ultimately, what the report concludes is this gives Sweden and Finland a veto over other NATO operations. It gives them a voice. It gives them decision-making capabilities within the alliance. And right now, they're excluded from that decision-making. They can consult with NATO, but they can't make decisions with them. So they understand that they're going to have to contribute to the defense of the alliance, not just for territorial defense, but also for things like Baltic air policing, for naval missions, and potentially to bolster security in other parts of the alliance. And I think Sweden and Finland are going to have to talk really hard about what they want in terms of NATO forces on their territory and what forces they're willing to put on the territory of other NATO allies, either in exercises or in support missions and defense missions. So it's a debate that's happening in Finland and Sweden, but they know that they will have obligations as well as benefits from joining the alliance.
So you heard Russia's response that it would be forced to take some sort of retaliatory measures. I think in 2016, Vladimir Putin was asked directly about Finland joining NATO, and he said something to the effect of, well, I'm sure NATO would be willing to fight until every last soldier from Finland is dead, essentially saying, you're throwing down the gauntlet. But I wonder how seriously we can take those threats right now, how seriously Finland is taking those threats. We see what Russia has in its arsenal now. We see how the attack on Ukraine is going. It's not going as they planned. How seriously should we take these threats?
Well, Finland takes these threats very seriously, and their defense concept is to stand alone right now and to hope for Swedish and Norwegian support. So joining NATO bolsters their security, but ultimately they have the forces that they think they need to truly punish Russia and to deter them from invading. They take threats from Russia very seriously, and they have since when they broke away, declared independence in 1917. They've been under constant pressure from Russia. So they know what this is like. They're prepared as a society much more than many other societies in terms of information warfare, cyber warfare, disinformation. They're ready for all of that. And 76% of the population supports NATO membership. That tells you that they are ready for this. They understand that they're under pressure. But really, once they join the NATO alliance, that Article 5 guarantee makes them so much safer. And ultimately, as you point out, what's Russia actually going to do? If we're talking about conventional forces, where are these troops going to come from? They're already stretched in the Ukraine invasion. They've removed a lot of troops from eastern parts of Russia in order to participate in the invasion. They're going to need those troops back there for Central Asian stability and, ultimately to look at China and Asia. So where are these troops going to come from? All I think they're going to do, I think they're going to make a lot of noise. I think they're going to put maybe some more missiles in the region. They already have nuclear weapons in the region. They'll probably say that they're going to increase that number. But I don't think they're going to do anything that changes the strategic situation. And I think Finland and Sweden are ready for these moves. And ultimately, like I said, I think this just makes the whole region incredibly safer.
William Albert, thank you so much for your expertise and knowledge and joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.